So first of all, thank you everybody for jumping on this morning. Dr. Jessica and I met at a Young Living event in January, and we happened to be on the same plane on the way home, and we ended up talking the entire time. And we knew pretty much immediately that we wanted to come together to share and empower and really encourage the autism community. Like, we really felt that as an autism mom and as a professional, like together we could have like this really impactful opportunity for everybody. So we're super glad you're here. We're excited that it actually fell on World Autism Day, which in my world is a big day. Dr. Jessica is, for those of you who don't know her, she is a chiropractor, and she has been assisting patients with healing through chiropractic, but also through the nutritional and emotional component. So I'm super excited to hear what she has to say about that piece of the pie, right? I know she's going to have a lot of wisdom to impart on us. For those of you who don't know me, I am a Young Living Diamond, but I am actually coming to you guys today more as a autism mom, and going to share a lot of things that we have been doing with our daughter, who is now 17, and I have a 23-year-old as well. So the journey has been long for us. I'm going to share our story, right? We're going to share Sahara's story and how I collaborated with Gary Young and the Young Living Institute and Ohio State with University with essential oils and autism study. And we can open it up for questions at the end. Again, if you didn't hear us say this earlier, if you have put in the chat who invited you, so then Dr. Jessica and I know who to follow up with, and if you have questions. So I will not watch the chat while we do this, because I can't watch that and talk at the same time. So there you go. Okay, so if you put your comments in the chat, I will either follow up with you later or after we present, or I'll post some stuff in the event post where you guys RSVP'd for this class as well. Okay, so with all that said, I'm going to share my daughter's story. She is 17 now, and when she was diagnosed with autism, she was 4. And it took us, actually, I'm wearing pink on Autism Day because everyone says light it up blue. And I'm very much about educating people about the differences between girls on the spectrum and boys. So I'm being a little snarky today, and I'm going light it up pink. Okay, because it actually took us 4 years to get her diagnosed. And this is a long time ago, but back then they even had the attitude that it couldn't be autism because autism was a boy's disorder, which today, you know, decades later, we know is not the truth. But back then it was very difficult for us, and they still use a male based assessment to diagnose autism. So I also feel a lot of girls who are on the spectrum get misdiagnosed and lose services. So I think that that is a big thing for me. When Sahara finally got diagnosed, she was 4. And we were told that she was catatonic probably 90% of the time. We were told to go home and put our affairs in order, that institutionalization was inevitable. So they told us that she would never talk, that she would never have meaningful relationships or gainful employment or live independently, like all these things. And they were things that a mom of a 4-year-old should never hear, right? Things that they really gave us no options. So that's kind of, if you're in the Columbus Autism Parents group, which I think a lot of you came from that are my friends, that's why I started that group, because we didn't have a lot of resources back then. And it was the parents who collaborated together that were able to give each other resources. So I'm super glad you guys are here today. And I hope that Dr. Jessica and I can at least give you some hope and some guidance of where to start. Okay. We also, at the same time, our older daughter, she was 5 years older, so she would have been 9 at the time. She was diagnosed with anxiety and high functioning autism. Again, it took us 10 years to get that diagnosis. And I don't like the diagnosis of high functioning autism, because to me that sets up barriers, right? Because sometimes my higher functioning kid has more barriers than my lower functioning kid, because this one's evident and this one is not always evident. So there's a lot of discrepancy there. And I'm really much about, on the spectrum, it doesn't matter where you are, like all these things can help everybody. Okay. So when Emily had the anxiety, it was actually, we were told to put her on psychotropic medication, and she was 10. So I had one kid who we were told to, institutionalization was inevitable. And I had another kiddo who was 10 that they were telling us psychotropic meds. And I had already been in natural health. And to me, I was like, nope, it doesn't work with me. It doesn't resonate with how we parent. And I had already been looking at like, what are they like? We don't treat autism, right? And everyone's like, are you saying that you're like, no, we're looking at the components of autism. And what Emily, in my house, what Emily goes through is very different than what Sahara goes through, right? And we're looking at those different signals that their body or their experiences give us, and we're addressing them individually. Okay. So what we want you guys to know as parents, that you guys are in control, and you guys get to decide what you do and what you don't do with your family and your kids. And you have the choice to make educated decisions for your families. And I don't think we're always empowered with that in mind. And you can make those decisions based on facts, not fear, which is super important to me. So here's the thing. If we land in different places at the end of this call, it's okay. We can all still be friends, right? But I'm hoping that you guys can at least take 1 or 2 suggestions that we have, and it can impact your life. All right. So with all of that said, we did use traditional therapies like speech, OT, and PT. We also thought outside of the box. So we did some floor time. I'm a former art therapist before I was a mom. So we did a lot of art therapy. We did music therapy, and we did hippotherapy, horseback riding. So all of those things have clinical outcomes for speech and communication, cognitive, social stuff, emotional regulation, the fine and gross motor skills. My biggest thing was I didn't want to have my daughter sitting in a traditional setting, maybe enclosed in a room with, 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 with somebody. I wanted them in real life scenarios with typical peers where they could be role modeling for them. So we had lots of good results with that. My daughter was still not talking, but she was doing good. We were having slow responses. We started to introduce we got rid of harsh chemicals out of our home at this time. We started reading food labels and got red dyes and yellow dyes and all the junk out of our cabinets, which that takes commitment, and it does impact some of the behavior and stuff. And I'm sure Dr. Jessica will kind of pop in on that in a little bit. But we were like, nobody gave us a handbook. Nobody told us what to do, but these were kind of the things where we felt like these are the changes that we can make in our house. And again, they were slow changes, but we were having changes. Like she was like 2 years into this, she wasn't in an institution. She started coming out of her catatonia a little bit, and we were pretty happy. We were copacetic, like she's not an institution, we're good. And then I met a girl at a mom conference who told me that there was a group of autism moms in Ohio who were using essential oils with their kids on the spectrum. And it's kind of funny now today, because 11 years into Young Living, I actually back then was very skeptical. And I literally thought, take the $sign off my kid's head. If essential oils, aromatherapy could help my kids, I would have known about it already, because I've done so much research. And there's just no way. There's no way that aromatherapy, they smell good, right? When my massage therapist used them, they made me feel relaxed. I didn't know the difference between what essential oils were and what premium essential oils could do, and what all the things that I know today, right? All the science and all the things that they can do on a biological level. And I actually shut her down. I started walking away, and I think that God is really funny, because as I was walking away, I had a Percocet in one pocket and I had a kidney stone on the other side, and my kidney stone jabbed me. And I don't know, I'm actually pretty introverted. So I don't know what made me do this, but I turned around and I went back to this girl and I was like, okay, if you think you can help my kid, can you help me? Like, I've had kidney stones for 9 months. I am miserable. Like, I was overweight. I wasn't sleeping. I was probably at the lowest in my health spectrum of my life. And she handed me a bottle of eucalyptus, and I thought she was crazy. And I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? And I put it on, I disengaged, I walked away. I'm like, I'm going back to that booth. Like, there's no way. And then the craziest thing happened was, like, an hour later, I realized I never took the Percocet, and I actually felt pretty good. And it was actually my event, and I was fluttering around and doing all the things. And I'm like, I need to go back to that booth and talk to that lady about what she just gave me, because I felt really good. Long story short, she ended up being my sponsor in Young Living and is one of my best friends now. And she was very gentle in sharing just a little bit about what the oils did. If you guys know me, I love to research, and I jumped on Google and I ran to the library and started just doing all these things, because back then we didn't have all the Facebook groups that we have today. So you guys are like fortunate with that. We didn't have to do that back then. So long story short, I started feeling better. It was a pivotal moment in my own health journey, but also within a couple of days, a couple of months, we started using the oils with the girls, and we saw changes in our house that I can only say are miraculous, in conjunction with all the other things I mentioned that we were doing, right? We kept on doing the dietary stuff and changing things, and we started continuing with the therapy and stuff, but we integrated more of the nutritional and the essential oils into our lives, and things just absolutely opened up and changed. Like, totally lost my notes. So this might not be a typical experience, but I will share that within 5 days we had words. My husband and I thought it was placebo effect. We wanted this to work so bad that maybe she would have been talking or having a couple words anyways, or maybe Sherry had those words and we didn't notice, but as an autism mom, you notice everything, right? And she daily just started getting better. And I think it was a conjunction of everything that we were doing. And 11 years later, I can tell you that she is mainstreamed in most of her classes. She absolutely talks. She talks like her mom. She talks like a truck driver. We have great conversations. She is very social. She has a lot of great ADL, independent living. Like, we're on track for her to live independently in the future. So a lot of the things that we have done are things that people have told us that we would never get to in the very beginning of our journey. So she is absolutely amazing. So if you're my Facebook friend, you probably have seen some of her art and stuff. Like, she's so talented. But I kind of want to pause there with my story and just kind of step aside and go, in the beginning, we didn't know what the oils were doing. It was very much like we saw something, we used it. A name of an oil would jump out at me and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, our very first oil we used with her was brain power. And to me, as an autism mom, had no other reason to use it other than brains, autism. It sounds good to me. Let me just try that. But now today we know that if you're using premium oils, they can actually transport oxygen throughout the body. And the molecules are so tiny, they can actually cross the blood-brain barrier, bringing oxygen into the brain. And that was actually one of the things that intrigued me, right? And then if the brain is being oxygenated, it's also helping the nervous system communicate with the rest of the body. So there's actual science behind what some of the essential oils and the constituents are doing. But I really feel like it had opened up a whole world of experience for my kiddo. So I mentioned brain power. I didn't bring it with me because it's up in Sahara's room and she's still sleeping. So Brain Power was the first oil that we used, and it pretty much supports the results that we got with our neurological system were profound. And again, I can't even explain what was doing what, but I can tell you that it helped with focus, it helped with concentration. It even helped during her ADL skills, and she just became more aware. It helps kids stay on task. I know when those of you who know who Gary Young is, he is the founder and he was the owner of Young Living. And when I had a conversation with him, he said that our kiddos weren't on the radar at all with Brain Power. He was looking at more of individuals who needed support with maybe they were older individuals and they had maybe memory retention and things like that, right? Staying unfocused that way. And he was actually pleasantly surprised that we were having some of the responses that we were having. Another oil that we used in the very beginning is Valor, and I have that one because I use it every day on myself as well. So if you think about Valor, you think courage, stamina, self-esteem, fortitude. I wear this before every IEP meeting. I use it before I do classes like this one. But also think that when we're stressed and worried, we create imbalances in our body, and it's not always about us, right? And if we think about, as autism parents, if life is stressful for us, can you imagine how stressful it is for our children? And my daughter is very articulate now, and she tells me daily how stressful it is. So this is one of the oils. She calls it her courage oil, her purple courage oil. And it helps her with her emotional stamina, getting through the day and being able to cope with the things that life sends her, right? So it helps them deal better with some of the stresses that are coming in. It also, in talking with Gary and stuff, this was one of the oils he recommended to use before you used any of the other oils that you would choose to use, that it would prime the body for accepting the other oils. So this is, we used, like, we would put Valor on the feet first, and then we would apply the Brain Power, right? We would put Valor on the feet first, and then we would apply whatever we were applying. And that was just what we did. Another oil that we used in the very beginning was Rutavala. I actually bought this one for Sahara's sleep. And we did not have, I'm just gonna close my shade, I'm sorry. That's better. We bought it for sleep, and it actually, sometimes with essential oils, you have to play with them to see what works for who, because our chemistry is different and how we receive the oil is different. And we didn't really have good responses. We didn't have the responses that we were looking for with Sahara. We did eventually figure out what to do with sleep, but I started researching more about Rutavala, because back then we only had a few oils in our collection, and I wanted to, well, we had it, like, what else can we use it for? And I read some compelling information about how Rutavala can help with the highs and the lows of emotions, right? And it could help with everyday blues and those types of emotions. So we actually started using this one with our other daughter, and almost immediately we saw changes in her attitude and her ability to leave the house and actually go into situations that would actually debilitate her in the past. It has, the researchers have pinpointed that the sesquiterpenes, big word for a tiny, tiny molecule, and the, I'm not sure if I pronounced this right, but I think it's valeric acid, were actually the active constituents in this that are causing the calming and the restorative effect of the central nervous system. So Rutavala, one of the ways I like to describe it is, if you feel like your nerves are frayed, they probably are, and I would apply my Rutavala to that. So I use that one a lot in the back of the neck right here where that bundle of nerves is. Another one that we used is vetiver. Vetiver is a really big root. So Gary came to Ohio soon after I met him to do a presentation on autism and oils and with our kids and stuff. And he had these slides, I wish I had access to them, where the vetiver root in Young Livings, our roots are huge. They're like 3 or 4 feet long. Maybe even longer. I can't remember. This is off my top of my head from 10 years ago. But typical vetiver roots are shorter, maybe 6 or 8 inches. So what we do and how we take care of our soil and how we grow and where we grow in the climate actually creates these bigger roots in vetiver. And the funny thing is, when Gary talked to us, he was sharing all these oils that I'm sharing with you right now in this segment. That I was organically using, that I just felt drawn to use with my kid. And he was like, these are the oils that he would have been using anyways, which was kind of validating to us as parents. A lot of times we go off what our gut says. Our gut never lies. So if you don't know what oil or supplement or therapy, whatever it is to use, like kind of just sit back and pay attention to what your gut is telling you. Your gut will lead you. If you feel like you're tightening up, don't use that one. If you feel compelled to grab one, try that one. Okay, so you use your intuition. Okay. Vetiver, we also use this on the back of the neck. If you're in Young Living, you know what the NAT technique is. We used vetiver a lot with that technique for sensory integration. So you guys can look that up. If you are not a member or a customer yet, you can pop me a message and I will get you that information as well. But vetiver is also very grounding. So we would use this oil before we went to the grocery store because the highlights and the buzzing and all the people would agitate my daughter. So we would put this on her feet. So if you think of those big roots it comes from, it like grounds and it roots you to the earth, right? So she wasn't so excited by the input. Sometimes I'll put this on her feet before school because school is very challenging for her. She hates school. But this oil helps her stay grounded and in the present moment while she's moving forward. There was a excuse me, study by Dr. Terry Friedman, for improving children's behavior, attention, and impulsivity using vetiver and a couple other oils. So that's interesting as well. And then the last thing that we did back then was, I knew that there was a gut-brain connection. And I knew that if we were restoring the body and healing the body and washing things out of the body, we needed her gut to be functioning. So a lot of kids on the spectrum have constipation and bowel issues and and things like that. So in my head, I'm like, I wanted her on a really good probiotic. I wanted her gut to be functioning and homeostasis, right? Bringing it back. So it doesn't matter if you're going too much or too little. We wanted to bring the balance in the gut. And the oil that I landed at was Digize. And I also used tangerine together. And I would apply these to her belly, but I would also put it on her inner shins from her knee down to her ankle. And I would layer Digize first, and I would put tangerine over it. And you would stroke down if you wanted things to move, and you would stroke up if you wanted things to slow down. Okay. And that was wonderful. Very early on, she would call it her happy tummy potty oil. So we left those in the bathroom for her, and it was phenomenal. So that's kind of what we did for the first 2 years. Like, those were the oils. We started introducing our, it's called Ningxia Red, but it's basically our wolfberry, it's like a multivitamin liquid nutrition also to her. So things were good. Things were moving. We started seeing changes throughout her day, and the oils just basically changed her life dramatically. I'm just going to say that. With that said, Young Living back then was a fairly small company, and it is owned by Gary and Mary Young. They're our founders and our owners. Through the grapevine, they had heard stories about my daughter, which just still today blows. It just kind of is mind-boggling to think that an owner of a company like ours could like hear a rumor about our kid and what we were doing. And Mary actually called me out of the blue one day, and it was stunning. And she is the most kind and phenomenal woman that you'll ever meet. But as we were talking, we were going over this tremendous situation that I was going through, and it was shaking my world. And she was asking me what she and Gary could do to help me get through this situation and what they could do to help us. And again, I'm thinking small Midwest autism mom, and Mary and Gary Young are like talking to me, figuring out what we can do. This was, I want to say this was probably 9 years ago. So 2 years into our Young Living journey. And then when she asked me what I needed, again, introverted. I don't know why I said it other than I was nudged. And I said, well, you know what? If you could have your husband call me and help me with my daughter, then we could take her story and we could help her autism community, and we could help her community, and we can help other kids around the world have better life experiences as well. Like that's like everything else can be put aside. My main drive is my kid and her community. So the next day, Gary called me and Gary calls, you answer. And it was, he was this big cowboy, kind, he reminded me of my dad. Like he was just like within seconds he had you grounded and you didn't feel like you were talking to Gary Young. And we talked about our daughter's past and medical stuff and all the things that we had done. And at the end of the conversation, he asked if we wanted him to come to Ohio to do a presentation for Sahara's community. And I'm like, are you really asking? Because I would be stupid to tell you no. I literally said that. And I think within 4 weeks later, he was here in Ohio and he did this huge presentation. And that was the pivotal moment for my daughter. Like all the oils I just talked to you guys about were phenomenal. Like we were happy with the results we were getting. We were happy with the nutrition and all the other therapies that we were doing. But at the same time, Gary offered, I had OSU reach out to us, who had also heard Sahara's story through my autism community locally here. And one of the researchers called and said that they had been, essential oils and nutrition had been on their radar, and they had been wanting to do a autism and essential oils study. And I was like, well, I can tell you what we're experiencing, but I don't know what the oils are doing. Like, I just know that we use them and we get these results. At the same time, Gary was coming to town. So I was like, but like, I do know somebody who you might be able to talk to. So we ended up coordinating, getting Gary with OSU together when he came to town, and it rocked our community's world. After that conversation, OSU went ahead with the study. Gary started sending me blends that were unlabeled. They were just on plain amber bottles and no instructions. And I'm like, Tim, what am I supposed to do with these? He's like, I don't know, but Gary's testing you. Don't ask him. Just do it. So what I ended up doing was finding moms on our team who were not using oils, or who were using oils. And I'm like, would you be willing to get off all the oils that you're using and all the supplements that you're using and just use this unmarked bottle of oil? And I think in that first pilot study, we had 15 parents in there. And the interesting thing is we had a portion of them that had results that went way up, like it just like Sahara was in that group and things just changed. We had a group that they actually started to decomp. And then the parents who stuck through it, they started to decomp a little bit, and then they moved up. They started to expand as well. And then the third group, they didn't see any results at all. So I wrote up all of our notes. I sent it back to Gary, thinking that was it. Like, okay, so now they're going to do this big study with OSU. And he actually sent me more vials of oil unlabeled. Well, they were labeled differently than the first bottles. So then this batch, I went ahead and I found autism moms that were in our community who had never used oils. And I wanted them to document, the good, the bad, the ugly, how you're using them. We had some people using the oils orally, topically and aromatically. We collected the data, we sent it back to Gary. And that is how the Reconnect kit came about. And this is my first Reconnect kit. It has a different front on it now, but so here's the thing. These are all blends. When you look at blends of oils, they don't just whip oil. Like you see these essential oil recipes on Facebook and Instagram and all those places. And there's actually science behind, sorry, you guys, formulating the blends, right? There's a order that you have to place them in. There's like sometimes you add an oil to the blend and you have to let it sit for 36, 48 hours. So there's science behind that. And it actually took us a whole year for them to formulate this based on what we were seeing and the results that we were sending back to Gary and OSU. And it blew me away. So sorry, you guys. So I'm going to go over there's 4 oils in this kit. I'm going to go over all 4 of those, and then I will give my voice a break and I will let Dr. Jessica talk. Okay. So the first oil in this kit is Reconnect. Obviously it's the Reconnect kit. So this oil rocked us. Okay. So it was that when I said that there was a group of kids that took off, right? Reconnect was one of those oils. And this oil, think about reconnecting. We reconnect with our surroundings, we reconnect with our environment and the people around us, but also our bodies need to reconnect, right? And the signals in our body. So that's the best way that I can describe what's happening. But I'm going to tell you 2 ways to use this. One, if your child can't self-administer, you're going to do this for them. Okay. But if your child, not you, are left-handed, then you are going to put your oils in your right hand. So I am right-handed, so I'm going to put my oils in my left hand, right? So whichever hand that you are dominant in, you're going to put the oil in the opposite hand. Okay. Then when you do that, this one might, oh no, there's some in there. There you go. When you do that, then you're going to take your dominant hand and you're going to spin the oil in your hand 3 times. What that actually does is it puts, there's a natural rotation of the cells in your body, and it creates a rotation in the oils. So then when you put the oils on your body, it can better grab onto the cells inside your body. So it actually helps them to work just a little bit better. Okay, so after you rotate it 3 times, if you are right-handed, you are going to take the oil to your left temple, and you're going to take it to the right side, and then you're going to rotate it right here. Okay. If you are right-handed, you would have, or left-handed, you would have it in your right hand. You would take your left hand, you would go to your right. So you're reaching over, and you would do the opposite. You would put it on your right temple and bring it over to your left. Okay. So let me explain that again, just so you guys have that. With the Reconnect, if you are right-handed, you're going to put the oil in your left hand, and you're going to use your right hand to spin the oil, and you're just going to bring it up to the left temple and bring it over to the right. Okay, does that make sense? You guys got that? If you are left-handed, you're going to put your oil in your left hand, your right hand, you're going to spin the oil, you're going to bring it straight up to the right temple, and you're going to bring it over like this. Okay. You can apply those oils to your child, and you can just set the intention that you're the surrogate for your child, but you're just going to put it. If your child doesn't let you do that, just get it on you or them. Okay. So Reconnect is for anybody with a brain. How about that? That's like the easiest way that I can say that. You can put it on the back of the neck. You can put it on the bottoms of the feet if they don't like the smell. The big toe has reflex points for the brain, so you can apply the oils there. You can also put them in the diffuser, so then when they are inhaling the vapors, they just go right into the body, and they have calming effects as well. We do a lot of diffusing, heavy diffusing of Reconnect reconnect in my daughter's bedroom. All right, the next oil that's in this kit is called In Touch. I love this oil too. They all have similar aromas, but slightly different. This one is very calming and grounding. Remember when I talked about vetiver and how we used vetiver for grounding and sensory integration and going out into the public and being like in touch with her body? In Touch does the same thing. So if you have vetiver, you can use vetiver. If you have In Touch, use In Touch. But again, we can apply this one before we go out and about. We can put it on the bottoms of the feet, and we can also diffuse it. Okay. The third oil in the kit is Sleepy Eyes. Sleepy Eyes says exactly what it is supposed to do. It helps you sleep, restful sleep, right? A lot of our kids don't sleep. So remember I said that I had bought Rutavala for sleep, and it really didn't hit the mark for us. Sleepy Eyes is like a magic oil for my daughter. We put that in her diffuser like 2 hours before bedtime. So it's kind of like melatonin, right? There's no melatonin in this, but when you use melatonin, you don't take your pill and go to bed and expect to sleep right away, right? Like there's this time that your body has to work with the brain and do whatever it needs to do, right? Same thing with the oil. We put this in the diffuser to wind her down, to slow down her thoughts so she's not perseverating on so many things. And to us, like, she falls asleep between 12 and 1 every night. And to us, that's a win. That's a good, healthy sleep cycle for her. In the past, she would be up till 6 or 7 in the morning, and then like life was hard. So we also can put it on the bottoms of the feet. Sahara will self-administer this right into her diffuser. She loves this oil. Okay. It also can be used during the day. So if you think about how our kids can get agitated and have emotional bursts and things like that, Sleepy Eyes will help to regulate some of that as well. And it just has this really calming and soothing effect. And then Genius is the last one in that bottle, or in that kit. This is a better bottle to see it. That's what it looks like today. Love, love, love this oil. It's formulated pretty much to stay on task. Think about, ADL skills when they're working on those types of things, and homework, and just any time that you need them to tame their squirrels and just stay focused. I use this one a lot for me. If you guys are on my team, I have squirrels all over the place. So I will actually just apply it just like I did the other oil right on my temples if I'm needing to focus more. You can also diffuse this one. Again, a similar aroma as the In Touch and the Reconnect, but again, similar aromas, but very different effects. And Gary formulated these 4 oils to be used together synergistically, right? Because they are all doing something, and they're all doing something together. So the last thing I want to say about this one is that when we were doing the pilot study with Gary, I want to say within the week that we started the oil, I want to say like 4 or 5 days. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while. But we were using this. Remember when we started oils, my daughter didn't talk at all. And we were leaving school pretty soon after starting. This oil was not labeled yet. It was one of the ones in the pilot study. And excuse me. And we left the building, and Sahara said, "Hey, mommy, sorry, look, my mouth works now. Just like her mouth works, and her mouth and her works. Mom, her mouth works. I'm a genius, mama. I'm a genius. My mouth works." And that is how that oil got its name, because of course I had to go email Gary and tell him all about it, and sent him the video of her saying I'm a genius. So he had told me that he was going to name this kit after him, which I was like, that's ridiculous. There's no way he's going to name it Sahara, which is kind of funny. But then when I opened it up and I saw the Genius oil, I was like, he held true to his word. Like, he did name a portion of it after her, which was really, really cool. So the last thing I want to say is consistency is really important. Sometimes when you apply one oil, you can, or a drop of oil, you can get phenomenal results, right? That's what got my attention in the beginning. Aaron gave me eucalyptus. I felt a change and I was like, my whole world opened up, right? But there's other times that you don't. There's times where it's subtle. And my biggest recommendation is, just because one drop of oil doesn't work doesn't mean it's not going to work. Keep on applying your oils consistently every day. I don't use these just once a day. In the beginning, we were using them 3, 4, 5 times a day. We were diffusing them. We were using them consistently throughout. So give it time. And with that said, because I love to talk, I'm going to stop and I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Jessica so that we can hear from her as well.
All right. Hello. Please let me know if the sound is not. We're going to say it's going to be great. There hell hath no fury like a mama told her daughter is not going to do well in life, right? I have a very similar story with my second daughter. We discovered at 5, she had a genetic blood disorder that put us in oncology department. And what they told us her life would be was not the life that we desired for her at all. So when I left that, being told that there was nothing I could do, there was nothing I could change, that I needed to prepare myself, that this was genetic, we left and decided that that wasn't the truth. And I think for many moms, you need to be okay with what you're being told is not the truth. If that's one message anybody takes home today, I think that's it. There is always something that you can do. There is always a way you can make it better for your child. Always. Medicine doesn't necessarily have those answers. And that was what my husband even said to me as I got out. And I was like, you can't tell me there's something I can't do. Like, there's gotta be. And he just looked at me and he said, there's something. I know there's something. They don't know that there's anything. Therefore, we're not coming back to ask them questions. And that's kind of what started me on my journey long before really Young Living. And we did much of the same thing. We cleaned up our environment. We paid attention to when she got sick and why she got sick. And that led to a huge environmental cleanup. It led to a huge food cleanup. We figured out real fast that food colorings, food additives, food flavorings made her go down really, really fast. She had always been adjusted, so we knew structure was a part of it. And in fact, that was one of the quandaries they had, is why she did not show this blood disorder for 5 years. And we think it was because we were already so healthy. And then we kind of developed over the years. I didn't realize I was developing a method to teach, but it's structure, emotions, environment, and nutrition. We also started paying attention to where she did great around people and where she crashed around people. And we eliminated a lot of people in our lives because her emotional balance mattered. And if somebody looked at me and said, oh, she can have this sucker, what are you doing being a bad mom? I was like, well, this is the last time we're seeing you ever. It just wasn't worth the fight. And it really wasn't worth the meltdown and the pain that she got into later. And my sole goal originally, we were told that we had to have 4 blood transfusions a year, and she would lose organs and she would develop diseases from the transfusions. And my sole goal was to get her to 3. And when it came for her first transfusion, she didn't need it. And I went, great, we were successful. Fast forward 17 years, she has never had a transfusion. She has never shown one sign of her genetic issue. We have healed it other ways. We have taken care of it other ways. We're still doing things daily for her. And we now know that's called epigenetics. That wasn't a word back when we found this out. What you drink, what you eat, what you think, where you live, how you feel, all matter, and all can turn on and turn off genetic experiences. So in my office, people came in with really scary diagnoses. We had, a lot of MS, a lot of cancers, a lot of different Parkinson's. And I was just like, hey, this worked for my kid. I don't know if it'll work for you. And we got almost 100% success with everything. I mean, it was just people got better once they started to radically change what had made them sick in the first place. And of course, the word got out, and a lot of neurological type came in and took care of a lot of autistic children. And the hardest part is getting control of their food. Because what we are finding, and there's so much research on this, is wheat, when it changed in the 80s, literally became a poison. And so we have celiac, which the number one, under the age of 18, celiac's first sign is going to be psychiatric in nature. And now we are seeing non-gluten celiac sensitivity, which is you have the exact same issue that celiacs do, except you're not celiac. And the number one first symptom is psychiatric in nature. My husband, ironically, did decide to go back and became a medical doctor. And when he went through his children's rotation, the number one thing that's coming through right now is psychiatric. And they're not talking about food at all, not at all. And that's real heartbreaking. It was real heartbreaking to him as well. The only solution for psychiatrics, and autism falls into that spectrum of words, is drugs. And we're going to drug them. And we we were standing in line one time at Space Camp, which is a big camp in Huntsville. You get to, go work with the astronauts. And we were watching this beautiful child in front of me, and you could just tell he was having a really hard time with the people and the ticks and he was moving and trying to express his uncomfortableness. And I leaned over to my husband and I said, God, I'd love so much to help him. And he leaned back down and he said, but I could just give him drugs and nobody would ever know. And I think that's the big difference, is that we tend to work with moms who don't want to drug something into submission. We want to actually see our child and help our child. And that's where I'm going to take you back to getting the food under control. Right now, wheat will stay in the system and cause inflammation through the vagal nerve all the way up through the brain for 6 months, one bite. And guess what? Like if you kiss your child and you kiss your child on the mouth and you eat wheat, we are now finding out that if there's any saliva transference, that you are now infecting your child as well, which is unfortunate. And that's some work done with celiacs. So that when a child's gut has been destroyed, they're in their wisdom, they don't want the heavier foods, the heavier proteins, because it's going to rot in their gut. And that's where the digies and the tummy gies come in so beautifully, because it really helps to reestablish the natural bacteria that needs to be in the gut. That's why taking it under the tongue is phenomenal. The moment you take it under your tongue, within seconds, the entire digestive tract is starting to change and it's starting to heal. And so what we start to find is that the taste buds change, and all of a sudden there's a craving again. And when we start to remove the sugars and the sweets, which is a lot of times all the kids want to eat because of food sensitivities or taste sensitivities or mouth issues, that we start seeing them ask for different foods or be accepting of different foods. And I think, like I said, that is the hardest to do when your child will only eat one thing. And being able to diligently change that is going to be your hardest hurdle, but it's going to really be your biggest game changer. Because when you start getting those poisons out of the gut, remember again, I said in seconds of putting something in your mouth, your brain immediately knows this is golden, this is helping me, or this is a chemical and this is hurting me. And if it's hurting you, the entire brain goes into the stress response. And so we lock into either a fight, flight, or freeze personality, just again, depending on what personality that child is. So we might have rages, anger, we might have removal, like where they just go into la la land, or you might have a runner. And for me, when somebody introduced me to Young Living Oils, I used them a lot with my third child, who was having a really hard time going to sleep. It was very rhythmic. If you did not do everything in absolute order, she just would fall apart, and it would take me hour and a half to get her to sleep. I really wasn't using them in the office. I was just using them, on her to try to get her to sleep. And the first time I used the oil, she was asleep in 10 minutes. And I was like, and I was a huge skeptic, and I was like, this is crazy. This is crap. I'm not doing this. And then all of a sudden I found, like, well, hey, she's sleeping. I'm sleeping because I'm putting them on her. So I'm sleeping better. I'm like, this is great. We'll use it for sleep. It'll be fantastic. And then just things started to happen. And I started to realize that I was calmer in the office when I wore them. I had a lot more energy when I wore them. I was nicer when I wore them. And so I always had a little roller ball of just different oils. White Angelica's one of them, Palo Santo, I like a vetiver. I love vetiver, cedarwood. Oh my gosh, love all of those. The root oils. I'm such a Rudy. And so took my kid on a field trip, and I'm a big fan of my children. I'm not always a big fan of other people's children. So I oiled up a lot, and I had it in my pocket, and I had 5 boys, and I was running through the zoo with these 5 boys, and we had another dad who had another group of boys, and we were supposed to all stay together, right? 2 parents, 10 kids. That makes a lot of sense, right? And we hit the dinosaur exhibit, which this was an animatronics dinosaur exhibit, and it went alive. And when it went alive, 4 of my boys went, oh, cool, and went down the path. And one of my boys went into an, oh, crap, I'm going to die, and turned around and ran the other way. So I didn't have any choice other than like grab him, literally pick him up and hold him as I'm chasing off the other 4 boys because the dad with his kids had disappeared. And so as I'm running through, I'm like reaching in my pocket, I'm fumbling, and I'm oiling this kid down because I'm like, okay, it works with me, it's going to work with him. And so I coated him with oils, and there was about 20 different exhibits of these dinosaurs. And by the time we got to the end of the exhibit, he was fine. He was holding my hand, he was walking, he was telling me what the dinosaurs were, he was using all the big words. And I get back to the teachers, and I'm like, okay, this kid smells like he has fallen into a vat of oils. I need to explain what I just did so that when he gets home, the mom's not like, what the heck happened? And so I started telling the teachers, and both of them went into a panic mode because, of course, they had forgotten to tell me that he is definitely was on the spectrum. And when he gets into a panic point, they literally have to stop, drop to the ground, hold him. Mom has to come up to the school, administer medication, and take him home. And they have never, in the 3 years that they had him in the school, saw him respond favorably and come out of an episode. And so, of course, they called the mom to let her know what I had done. And the mom called me that night, said, whatever it is, bring it to my house immediately. And fast forward with him, he's actually, he was in a Montessori school. He mainstreamed into public school. And he just got a full scholarship to math and science, one of the best in the state, down in South Alabama. So we're super excited about that. So for me, one of the biggest things that I learned is that every child is different. And I will always say, if you have a child with autism, you have a child with autism. Are there similar things? Sure, there's similar things, but are there identical protocols? I get a lot of phone calls all the time from doctors. Tell me what your autism protocol is. And I'm like, there isn't one. You meet one child, you have one protocol. You meet a second child, you have a second protocol. And I think that's where medicine has a really hard time, is because they really like the same protocol for everybody, no matter what your problem is. They have a set of drugs. Those drugs are used all the time, no matter what. The other thing that I've learned is that some children need 1 drop, and 10 drops is too much. And I've learned other children need 100 drops, and 1 drop won't touch it. And that actually has a lot to do with their own biochemistry. Some people need a lot of medication to actually achieve a goal medically, and some people need very little medication to achieve the exact same goal. And they're actually starting to teach this now in medicine. So they're teaching the doctors, when you have a brand new patient with a brand new protocol, give them 1/4 of the dose that you would normally give and see if they respond favorably. If they don't, go up in 2 weeks. But if they do, you have an elongator. Somebody who takes a very little bit of the drug elongates it into a lot. So they don't clear it in 4 hours. They don't clear it in 6 hours. They don't clear it in 8 hours. They clear it in 12 hours. But yet, if you look at the prescription, they should have cleared it in 4. So there's where I think a lot of times kids can get overdosed extraordinarily fast. There is also certain genetic types where you give some of the kids the newer psychiatric medications, and it actually triggers in their brain suicide and depression. They actually know this. They should be doing cheek swabs in all children before they prescribe this, but they don't. And so that can lead to a lot of issues when you think you're improving, but then all of a sudden you're not improving. And then the doctor will just tell you that you need more medication, and it can actually spiral very, very quickly. So that's kind of the scoop on how I handle things. So when I start looking at people and patients, I will always tell them, environmentally, you have to clean up. You have to remove all of the toxins that stimulate the stress response. So anything on your skin that's a chemical will stimulate the stress response. Anything in your diet that is fake, that is chemical, just because they sell it on the stores doesn't mean it's safe or good. You have to remove it, which does mean you've got to cook. But that doesn't have to be hard. You can throw everything in an Instapot and 30 minutes later, have a great meal from the freezer to your table. It does require a plan, which I hate cooking. I mean, like, I'm the one that has always thought the kitchens were a nice accessory, but really not needed. And I had to learn to cook. I joke all the time, I taught my children to cook so that I would be relieved of that duty. Um, we have to just plan a little bit more. We have to figure out how to get them outside. We have to figure out how to exercise. We need to find great chiropractors that know how to adjust these children comfortably. And they're out there. Not all of them are great. Just because they say chiropractor does not mean they're fantastic. You have to interview them, just like you would interview anybody else. And I can help with that. If you really want to find a great chiropractor, I can help you find that. And you have to deal with their emotions. And that is the key that I think is so beautiful about the Young Living oils, is they are designed to go through the brain within seconds. Again, from inhalation. Smell is your fastest stress response. It is the first thing that's going to alert all of the five senses. Remember, your stress response goes by the five senses. Can I taste it? Can I see it? Can I hear it? Can I smell it? Can I feel it? I always forget the feel one. And that's the applications of chemicals, lotions, things like that. So smell is the fastest of all of those. So if we need to change a behavior, or if we want to amplify a behavior, the quickest way to do that is through smell. And then the second fastest way is application. So when we inhale and then apply, it actually works a little bit faster terms long term than under the tongue. But if it's a gut issue, the fastest thing is going to be under the tongue, right? So got to kind of play with where's it coming from. Anytime you want to affect the brain, you affect the gut. The brain doesn't work unless the gut works. A lot of times they call the gut the second brain. And if you want a really, really great book, it's called The Second Brain. And it's fantastic. And it explains why you have to get a hold of the gut to heal the brain. But that is the one part that I tell moms all the time, is you have to experiment. Experiment with 1 drop, 2 drops, 10 drops. Experiment every 15 minutes. Experiment every 30 minutes. On a weekend, experiment as much as you can. Does your child do better with a diffuser? Does your child do better with application? Does your child do better you putting on? Does the child do better them putting it on? Some personality styles, they have to do it themselves, no matter how old they are. I do it myself. I think that was the number one thing that all of my children told me. The other thing that I loved what you said earlier is trust your instincts. I often will tell moms, let the child pick what oil they need in the moment. They will never be wrong. And you'll always be amazed. You'll be like, why did they pick that one? And then all of a sudden, you'll figure out later, oh my gosh, they were like 100% right. So I always tell moms, when in doubt, open up your cabinet, show all your oils, and say, which one do you need today? And if you really want to have fun, ask your child, which one do you personally need? Say, hey, which one do I need today? And when you start incorporating your child and helping you with your day as well, they're much more open to you helping them with their day, because all humans want to have control over their bodies, right? And I think a lot of times if you say, hey, can you pick my oil and I'll pick your oil, that seems to go real far with kids as well. But the other part is just consistency. And that, I think, is sometimes hard if we don't have our community on board with us. And that was the biggest thing for me. I wanted to create a community that we all talked about the same things. We talked about structure. We talked about emotions. We talked about environment. We talked about nutrition. And we all assisted each other, so that when we said, hey, yeah, I'm getting rid of red dye and wheat, moms would be like, yay, instead of like, why'd you do that? That's stupid. That's like the food pyramid. You should be eating that. So sometimes it can be lonely in the beginning until you find your people, because you have to find your people who are supportive of you and your food choices. And you can take your kids over to their house and they can eat. They can bring their kids over to your house and they can eat. And sometimes that takes a day or two to, find. But I encourage you to find it. And the last part that I say on this, I've been teaching families how to do this for just coming on 30 years. And it's so much easier now than it was. There's online communities, there's groups. People are waking up. People are understanding what is happening. People are looking for co-ops. People are looking for organic produce. People are looking for farmers. People are looking for a community of like-minded people. So don't be quiet. Raise your hand and reach out and grab a friend.